want to bring in Scott Hurst now with the latest on the response from Canada. And Scott, the potential for retaliation.
Marcia, this is still a very real looming economic threat as Canada, however, may have dodged that initial bullet as Trump had promised to impose these tariffs on day one. Obviously, that hasn't happened. But of course, we're now hearing February 1st as a date for when Donald Trump may impose these tariffs on both Canada and Mexico. So now we're talking less than 2 weeks away. So as you mentioned, the federal government once again continuing to meet with premiers in a virtual meeting today, met with its newly formed Economic Council yesterday as part of its retreat that it had been on since Inauguration Day. And so now there are specifics that we're starting to hear in terms of retaliatory tariffs, not just from the BC Premier, but also from the federal government as well. The Prime Minister even using Trump's own words from his inauguration speech against him, saying the new administration will need Canada to usher in Trump's promised golden age of America. But in more specifics, the Prime Minister then floating the idea of potential for dollar matching tariffs in terms of if or when Canada could be hit with tariffs. Trudeau acknowledged Trump's negotiating style of trying to keep its partners off balance. Canada ultimately has a 3-round retaliation plan, according to senior government sources, that could start with singling out certain American products, as we saw from the previous Trump administration. There were very specifically targeted tariffs there, and it could start there, but then escalate to hit back with more than $110 billion worth of goods. And so there's their next virtual meeting, once again, as we mentioned today, with premiers, Marcia, as this looming threat remains. And it appears, even though Canada may have dodged that initial bullet of not having tariffs imposed right away, it appears a tactic that Trump is still very much interested in and very much serious about imposing on both Canada and Mexico at this time.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the premiers. As you mentioned, they'll be meeting virtually today with the Prime Minister. The BC Premier has an idea. I've heard people joke about this. Maybe Canadians should just stop going to Disney. But he appeared to be serious about Canadians limiting travel to the U.S. Not all premiers, though, are on the same page when it comes to responding to Trump's threat.
Marcia, BC Premier David Eby said these plans in terms of what Canadians, what British Columbians, what he suggested they should do in terms of hitting back, retaliation for a country that he says wants to impose deliberate economic harm. So potential of not traveling, not spending money in a country that wants to do that to it's one of its closest trading partners and allies, but also floated the idea of banning American booze from BC liquor stores, an idea that we've also heard floated here in Ontario, two of the biggest suppliers in this country of American booze. But all premiers aren't on the same page here. We've heard a lot from Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who is at the inauguration, say now is the time for talk in this short reprieve that we may have gotten. Now is the time to try to figure out where we can work together and move forward together, and not so much retaliation, as we're hearing a lot from the BC Premier, from the Ontario Premier, and also from the federal government at this time. Even though there has been a lot of talk about this Team Canada approach, Marcia, it appears not all the premiers at this time are on the same page.
All right, Scott Hurst for us. Scott, thanks so much.